Hey everyone, welcome to the human side of hospitals. I'm so glad you are here. And now on this channel, we don't just talk about medicine, we listen to real people, to patients, to doctors, nurses, caregivers, anyone who has an unforgettable hospital experience. The hospitals can be places of healing, hope, sometimes even heartbreak, and every story has something to teach us. That is why I'm starting this, just to give people a space to share, to be heard, and to remind us that behind every hospital wall are human beings with stories worth telling. Now, here's where you come in. So, if you've ever been a patient, if you've worked in a hospital, or if you've supported a loved one through their hospital journey, I would love to hear from you. And you can send me a short video, audio, just write your story down. Or if you would like to sit and chat with me, you can join me live on Zoom. And all you have to do is just fill the form in the description below, or you can send me an email. And it doesn't matter where you are from, who you are, or whatsoever. You are welcome wherever part of the world you come from. And before we dive in, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn the notification bell. Basically, not to miss these incredible voices from around the world. And a quick disclaimer before we start: these stories, their personal stories, shared with full consent, and we are here just to inspire, educate, and raise awareness. One thing is those who want to remain anonymous, well, for the sake of confidentiality and privacy, altered some of their voices into AI voices. And note that even the advice shared in these videos or in these experiences, they are not a substitute for medical advice. Always remember this. And if you have health concerns, always speak to a qualified healthcare professional. All right, let's dive into today's story.
I'm Marcus Henley, head groundskeeper at Woodlawn Memorial Cemetery in Springfield, Ohio. Or at least I was until I submitted my resignation last month after 12 years of dedicated service. I hold certifications from the International Cemetery, Cremation and Funeral Association, advanced horticulture credentials from Ohio State University, and specialized training in historic preservation maintenance. My department managed 847 acres of rolling hills, containing over 180,000 grave sites dating back to 1847. I've seen everything you can imagine in cemetery maintenance: vandalism, weather damage, subsidence issues, wildlife problems, and the occasional drunk teenager thinking they're being clever. I've dealt with grieving families, municipal inspectors, archaeological surveys, and environmental assessments. In 12 years, I've overseen thousands of burials, countless memorial services, and maintained every square foot of that sacred ground with meticulous care. But what I'm about to tell you is the one case that made me question everything I thought I knew about soil mechanics, structural integrity, and the fundamental laws of physics, and ultimately led me to leave the profession entirely. Woodlawn Memorial is situated on what was once the Whitmore family estate, purchased by the city in 1846. The original Gothic Revival Chapel still stands at the cemetery's heart, surrounded by towering oak trees that predate the Civil War. Our maintenance facility houses industrial-grade equipment: Toro Groundsmaster mowers, Vermeer stump grinders, a fleet of utility vehicles, and enough landscaping tools to maintain what's essentially a small city. The administrative building contains detailed plot maps, burial records going back over 175 years, and soil composition charts that I knew by heart. My crew consisted of 6 full-time groundskeepers, each responsible for specific sections. We followed strict protocols for everything from grass cutting schedules to monument repair procedures. Every morning at 6 a.m. sharp, we gather in the maintenance shed for assignments, weather briefings, and equipment checks. I took pride in running a tight operation. Woodlawn consistently received state recognition for grounds excellence. The incident began on October 23, 2024, during what should have been a routine Tuesday morning inspection. I was walking the perimeter of Section C, the oldest part of the cemetery, checking for any overnight damage after strong winds had blown through the area. The weather station in my truck showed sustained winds of 35 mph with gusts up to 52 mph, enough to knock down weak branches and scatter debris, but nothing we hadn't handled countless times before. At approximately 7:15 a.m., I noticed something unusual near the Blackwood family mausoleum, a limestone structure built in 1889 that housed 5 generations of a prominent local manufacturing family. The mausoleum stood 12 feet high with thick stone walls, a slate roof, and an ornate iron gate that had been sealed shut since the last burial in 1963. According to our records, I had personally inspected this structure just 3 days prior during our weekly monument assessment, noting nothing unusual in my log. But now impossibly, the heavy iron gate stood wide open. This wasn't just concerning from a security standpoint. It was professionally impossible. The gate had been sealed with a specialized mortuary lock, the kind used in older cemeteries that required a specific key held only by the funeral director and myself. More troubling was the condition of the stone threshold. Where there should have been a solid granite slab worn smooth by decades of weather, I found fresh gouges in the stone, deep scratches that looked like claw marks, each approximately 3 inches long and carved to a depth that would require industrial machinery to achieve. I immediately radioed my assistant supervisor, Jim Valdez, who had 15 years of experience and held his own certifications in monument restoration. When he arrived 10 minutes later, he confirmed what I was seeing, but couldn't explain it any better than I could. "Marcus, this doesn't make sense," he said, running his fingers along the gouged threshold. "These marks, they're not from vandals or weather damage. Look at the precision, the depth. This would take diamond-tipped cutting tools." We examined the gate mechanism itself. The mortuary lock showed no signs of forced entry, no damage to the metal, no tool marks on the hinges. Yet it hung open as naturally as if someone had used the proper key. I checked my key ring. The mausoleum key was still there, and when I tested it, the lock mechanism worked perfectly, clicking shut with the distinctive sound I'd heard hundreds of times during routine inspections. But here's where things became professionally impossible. According to our digital access logs, maintained by the cemetery's electronic security system installed in 2019, no one had approached this mausoleum since my inspection on October 20th. The system used motion sensors with a range of 20 feet, infrared detection accurate to within 6 inches, and GPS tracking on all authorized personnel devices. The data showed no movement in this area between 4:47 p.m. on October 20th and my arrival at 7:15 a.m. on October 23rd. Yet the gate was open and fresh gouges marked the stone. Jim and I spent the next hour documenting everything. We took over 40 photographs, measured the scratches with precision calipers, and recorded GPS coordinates for each anomaly. The gouges measured exactly 3.2 inches in length, 0.7 inches in width, and 0.4 inches in depth. Remarkably consistent dimensions that suggested mechanical precision rather than random damage. At 8:30 a.m., I called our monument restoration contractor, Davies Heritage Stone, to get a professional assessment. Sarah Davies, a certified stone conservator with 23 years of experience, arrived within an hour. What she told us defied everything I knew about stonework and weathering patterns. "These gouges are fresh," she confirmed, using a jeweler's loupe to examine the stone. "I'd estimate they were made within the last 24 hours based on the color differential and lack of weathering in the cuts. But Marcus, this is limestone, relatively soft stone. To achieve this depth and precision, you need either diamond-tipped cutting tools operating at specific angles, or something with incredible force applied in a very controlled manner." She paused, studying her measurements. "The force required to create these marks in limestone would be approximately 2,800 pounds per square inch, applied with surgical precision. That's not something you achieve with hand tools or even most power tools." By this point, word had spread to the rest of my crew. Bobby Martinez, who handled our equipment maintenance and held a degree in mechanical engineering, examined the mausoleum door's hinges and found something equally disturbing. Despite being open for the first time in decades, the hinges showed no signs of corrosion removal, no metal filings, no lubrication stains. Nothing that would indicate forced movement of a mechanism that should have been frozen solid with rust and age. "It's like the door opened itself," Bobby said, testing the swing mechanism. "These hinges are moving like they were serviced yesterday, but there's no evidence of any maintenance work." I contacted cemetery records to verify the last authorized entry. Our files, cross-referenced with the funeral home's records and the city's burial permits, confirmed that no one had legitimate access to this mausoleum since 1963. The last funeral director who held a key, Harold Morrison, had died in 1987, and his keys were transferred to our secure storage, where they remain sealed in evidence bags. That afternoon, I decided to review our security footage from the past week. Woodlawn had installed a comprehensive surveillance system in 2022, with high-definition cameras covering all major pathways and significant monuments. The camera positioned to monitor Section C had a clear sight line to the Blackwood Mausoleum from approximately 150 feet away. What I found on that footage still haunts me. At 2:47 a.m. on October 23rd, the camera recorded what appeared to be normal nighttime conditions. The mausoleum gate was clearly visible and securely closed. At 2:48 a.m., something moved across the frame. Not a person, not an animal, but a shadow that seemed to shift independently of any light source. For 17 seconds, this shadow passed between the camera and the mausoleum, and when it cleared, the gate was open. I watched this sequence 47 times. There was no visible cause for the shadow, no corresponding movement of trees or clouds that would create such an effect. Our weather station recorded no precipitation, no fog, and minimal wind during that time frame. The shadow moved with apparent purpose, following a direct path to the mausoleum, but cast no reflection on nearby monuments and seemed unaffected by the cemetery's LED lighting system. I called in our security consultant, retired police detective Robert Hayes, who specialized in video analysis. After examining the footage with professional enhancement software, he confirmed what I was seeing, but couldn't explain it. "Marcus, this is beyond my expertise," he admitted. "The shadow appears on multiple camera angles simultaneously, ruling out equipment malfunction. It moves consistently across different camera systems, which would be impossible if this were a technical glitch. But there's no identifiable source creating this shadow effect." The timestamp on the footage was verified against our atomic clock synchronization system, confirming that this event occurred exactly as recorded. Yet according to our motion sensors, infrared detectors, and perimeter alarms, nothing triggered any security alerts during this time frame. 3 days later, on October 26th, another incident occurred that shattered any remaining rational explanations I might have clung to. During my morning rounds at 6:45 a.m., I discovered that the gate to the Blackwood Mausoleum had been sealed shut again. Not just closed, but sealed with what appeared to be the original mortuary cement that had been removed without any trace of disturbance just days before. The cement showed the proper aging characteristics, weathering patterns, and mineral deposits that would take decades to develop naturally. More impossible was the condition of the threshold gouges. They had been filled with limestone dust that perfectly matched the surrounding stone's color, density, and weathering patterns. Laboratory analysis later confirmed that this limestone dust contained mineral compositions identical to the original 1889 quarry stone, including trace elements that are no longer present in modern limestone due to changes in quarrying techniques and environmental factors. The work required to accomplish this restoration would have taken a professional stone conservator several days, cost thousands of dollars in specialized materials, and required equipment that would be impossible to transport and operate without detection in our monitored cemetery environment. Yet it had happened overnight, without triggering a single security alert. I began questioning every aspect of our monitoring systems. I brought in SecureTech Solutions, the company that installed our surveillance equipment, for a complete diagnostic. Their senior technician, Amanda Foster, ran comprehensive tests on all cameras, sensors, and recording equipment. Everything functioned perfectly, with no sign of tampering, system failures, or data corruption. "Your system is operating exactly as designed," she confirmed. "The footage you showed me is genuine, recorded by functioning equipment. I can't explain what caused those shadow patterns, but I can verify that your cameras recorded exactly what they detected." By early November, I was spending sleepless nights researching everything from limestone geology to electromagnetic phenomena, desperate for rational explanations that continued to elude me. I consulted with professors from Ohio State's geology department, stonemasons with decades of experience, and even contacted the Smithsonian's conservation laboratories seeking insights into the mysterious limestone restoration. Every expert I consulted confirmed the same impossible conclusion. The work performed at the Blackwood Mausoleum required knowledge, materials, and techniques that shouldn't exist in modern stone conservation, accomplished in a time frame that defied practical limitations, all without leaving any trace of the tools, equipment, or personnel necessary for such an undertaking. Then came the second incident. On November 12th, I discovered fresh gouges at the Whitmore family crypt, located in Section A, approximately half a mile from the Blackwood Mausoleum. These marks were identical in dimension, depth, and precision to those I'd found at the first site. The gate stood open, despite being secured with the same type of mortuary lock that had protected it since 1924. Our security footage from the previous night showed the same shadow phenomenon at 3:23 a.m., lasting 19 seconds before the crypt gate appeared open. Once again, our electronic monitoring systems detected no movement, no unauthorized access, and no equipment that could have created such effects. Jim Valdez, who had initially approached this mystery with healthy skepticism, was now as disturbed as I was. Marcus, in 15 years, I've never seen anything that couldn't be explained by vandalism, weather, or mechanical failure. This is something else entirely. The pattern became clear when, exactly 2 weeks later, we discovered identical conditions at the Thornfield Memorial Chapel in Section F. Same gouges, same open gate, same impossible restoration techniques applied overnight, same shadow phenomena recorded on multiple cameras at 4:11 a.m. I started keeping detailed logs of these incidents, cross-referencing dates, times, environmental conditions, and astronomical data, searching for any pattern that might provide clues. The incidents occurred at roughly 2-week intervals, always between 2:30 and 4:30 a.m., during periods of minimal lunar illumination. Each affected structure dated to the late 1800s, all contained multiple generations of the same family, and all had been sealed for decades. Most disturbing was the precision of the restoration work. Each site was returned to its original sealed condition within 72 hours, using materials and techniques that defied modern understanding of stone conservation. The limestone repairs showed appropriate weathering for structures over a century old, mineral compositions that matched historical quarrying methods, and aging patterns that should have taken decades to develop. I consulted with Dr. Elizabeth Garrett, a professor of materials science at Case Western Reserve University, who analyzed samples from all 3 sites. Her findings were conclusive and terrifying. Mr. Henley, these limestone samples contain mineral signatures consistent with 19th century quarrying methods, including trace elements that haven't been present in Ohio limestone for over 60 years due to environmental changes in modern extraction techniques. Either someone has access to limestone that's been stored in perfect condition since the 1800s, or these repairs were made using materials that shouldn't exist. By December, the incidents had begun affecting my crew's morale and my own professional confidence. Bobby Martinez submitted his resignation first, citing unexplainable phenomena that made him uncomfortable continuing work in the cemetery. 2 other groundskeepers followed within days, despite the excellent wages and benefits we provided. I found myself second-guessing every aspect of cemetery maintenance that I had mastered over 12 years. How many other routine incidents had I misunderstood? How many times had I attributed unexplainable phenomena to natural causes simply because I couldn't accept alternatives? Were there patterns in our records that I had overlooked because they didn't fit my understanding of how cemeteries operated? The final incident occurred on December 18th at the Morrison Vault, and this time I witnessed it personally. I had begun conducting nighttime patrols, hoping to observe whatever was causing these disturbances. At 3:45 a.m., equipped with thermal imaging equipment, digital cameras, and electromagnetic field detectors, I positioned myself approximately 200 feet from the Morrison Vault with a clear line of sight. At 3:52 a.m., my electromagnetic detector began registering massive field fluctuations, readings that spiked beyond the instrument's measurement capacity. The thermal imaging showed a temperature drop of 47 degrees in a localized area around the vault, despite ambient conditions remaining stable just 20 feet away. Then I saw it. The shadow I had observed dozens of times on security footage materialized before my eyes, not cast by any light source, but seeming to generate its own darkness that moved with deliberate intent. It approached the sealed vault gate, and as I watched through binoculars, the heavy iron mechanism began opening with mechanical precision, despite no visible force being applied. The scratching sounds that followed will haunt me forever. Not random scraping, but rhythmic, purposeful carving that lasted exactly 93 seconds. When the sound stopped, the shadow dissipated, leaving the vault gate standing open with fresh gouges, identical to those found at previous sites. I photographed everything, documented the electromagnetic readings, and recorded temperature variations throughout the incident. Yet when I reviewed my digital photos the next morning, they showed only normal nighttime cemetery conditions. The electromagnetic detector's memory contained no data from the previous evening, despite functioning perfectly before and after the incident. The Morrison vault was restored to its original sealed condition within 48 hours, following the same impossible pattern established at previous sites. I submitted my resignation on January 15, 2025, after consulting with cemetery management, reviewing 12 years of incident reports, and accepting that some phenomena in this profession cannot be explained through conventional maintenance knowledge or rational analysis. In my final report, I documented 17 separate incidents spanning 4 months, each following consistent patterns that defied physical explanation. I provided detailed photographs, measurement data, laboratory analyses, and expert consultations, all confirming conditions that shouldn't exist according to everything I learned in over a decade of professional cemetery management. The new head groundskeeper, hired from a cemetery in Toledo, brings 20 years of experience and excellent credentials. I've briefed him thoroughly on standard maintenance procedures, equipment operation, and routine protocols. What I haven't told him is how many routine incidents in cemetery records might be misunderstood by professionals who assume rational explanations for every phenomenon. Sometimes I wonder about the thousands of groundskeepers working in cemeteries across the country, maintaining sacred grounds with the same confidence I once possessed. How many of them have encountered incidents they've rationalized as vandalism, weather damage, or equipment failure, because accepting alternatives would shatter their professional worldview as completely as mine was shattered. The Blackwood Mausoleum, along with the other affected sites, remains sealed and secure according to current cemetery records. But I know that somewhere in Section C of Woodlawn Memorial, shadows continue moving independent of any light source, and ancient stone continues bearing witness to forces that exist beyond the boundaries of conventional groundskeeping knowledge. I may have left the profession, but I'll never forget what I learned in my final months as a cemetery groundskeeper. Some things buried in sacred ground refuse to remain at rest, and the living aren't always the only ones who walk among the headstones after dark.